Hi, everybody. This is Carolina Millan, and welcome to another episode of our podcast. And today, I am joined here by the amazing results coach and so much more, Michael Savage. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. And just to give you guys a little bit of context, I met Michael about 4 years ago at the Life and Wealth Mastery event by Tony Robbins in the beautiful Canary Islands. And Mike left a great impression on me. I learned so much from you, by the way. So thank you. And we ran into each other by chance in February, I think, at the 10X Growth Conference. And we were both like staring at each other like, I know him. I know her. Oh my God, it's Mike. And so, I wanted to thank you so much for making the time to be here with me. Mike just mentioned that he was moving offices. So why don't we start there?
Well, it's interesting because when life transitions, it's like everything transitions, right? And major transitions in almost every area of life in a good way. My office used to be in the back of my comic book store. So outside of what I do in coaching and in speaking and working for Tony, I also own a couple comic book stores. And we moved a location, and I don't have an office in the back of the store anymore. I used to like to be in the store. And so what I have behind me is all sorts of stuff from the comic book store. Awesome. that myself and my assistant are still putting away. So apologize for the craziness, but that's what happens.
Okay. That's okay. So let's start by talking a little bit more about you, your story, your background. Like, what were you doing before you became a coach, before you were working for Tony? I'm super curious about how you started into this personal growth and development world.
Well, let's see. Before I started working for Tony, I was in ninth grade.
Wow.
I met Tony when I was 14 years old.
That's amazing.
My parents were in network marketing, and back in the early 90s, they did Amway and Excel and all these fun companies, a company called Alliance Vitamins, and they brought in a trainer from Robbins who did a presentation and then offered some people an opportunity to go to a one-day Tony Robbins event called Competitive Edge. And or it might have been called Strategic Influence. The same program had two different names back then. And there were probably 300 or 400 people at the training. They were all in my parents' business with their business partner. And they raffled off a ticket to go to Competitive Edge, and I won the raffle. Now, I'm the son of the people throwing the training, so it totally looks staged. But the truth is I legit won the raffle. They actually gave away another ticket just to make sure everybody felt good. And I didn't know who Tony was. My parents had never been to a Tony Robbins seminar, and I was adamant that I wanted to go. And there was a promoter in the area who worked as a partner with Tony. His name was Randy Zales. I ended up going with Randy, and I walked in the doors. I was 14 years old. And there's only about 300 people at this event.
Wow.
Because it was back, this is, early 90s. And they were standing on chairs, jumping and hollering and massaging each other. And I thought, what is going on here? Who are these people and what is happening? But I loved everything I learned from him at that point and started crewing. And when I'd crew, I'd come in and work the sales tables because I wanted to learn a skill set. Mic running is fun, high-fiving people is fun, but I really wanted to dive in with the sales teams. And from there, in my teens and early 20s, worked on the Must team, which supports event sales, and then eventually became a coach. And I've been a coach there now for 16 years.
That's a great story. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I snuck in.
How did you end up in the Wealth Mastery event, like hosting that event? When you did such an amazing job, because I remember showing up at that event. I didn't know Tony was not going to be there. I show up and I'm like, who are these people? Where's Tony? And then by the second day, I was like, who's Tony again? I love these guys. You and Lauren, you did such a great job. So
It's funny. I've known Lauren since I was a teenager, right? So Lauren Slocum's been a huge influence in my life as well. And you know, she's been facilitating events for a long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, being at Robbins and bringing other skill sets to the table. So I had my coach training. I got outside of Robbins. I spoke for 10 years through my church, right? I would speak almost every week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And I spoke internationally for the church. So I grew up acting. I was in drama, did some acting locally, did some modeling. So I wasn't afraid to be on stage. It's never been a challenge for me. Since I was a kid, I've been goofing off. My sister played piano, and I used to, you know, be in some of her plays and things like that. It was a blast. And when the opportunity came for someone to start helping with coaching sales at Unleash the Power Within, I put my hand up. And we ended up creating a whole coaching breakout on Sunday mornings where people would come, and I would do like an hour and a half of content, do some work with the audience, and then we would ultimately enroll people in coaching. We did so well in that I got the opportunity to go to Wealth. And here's the interesting piece. They were looking for a new facilitator because Scott Harris began to do all the business masteries, and it kind of left a gap. I was actually living with Scott Harris at the time in Australia.
Really?
And we were sitting at the table, and an email came to him and to me at the same time, like our phones dinged, and we opened it and kind of looked at each other. And it was the invite for him to come train and for me to be part of the group that was being trained for Wealth Mastery. So I went through that, and ultimately the handoff was pretty easy, and I started spending some time in Fiji, and then being able to do events in the US and in Spain. And I felt privileged because they asked me to take over right when Tony was launching Money Master the Game.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to handle that event and help reshape it and align it with the book, and there was a lot of attention on the event at the time because of the book, was a really cool experience. And I did not take that lightly. I didn't take that lightly at all.
So since we're talking about, you know, wealth and the book, of course, well, I attended the event a long time ago, and honestly, I haven't implemented everything I should have implemented.
You can't tell a coach this.
That's why I'm confessing it to you.
Yeah, perfect.
I see you as a coach, as my coach. But for people listening and watching, what are 2 or 3 recommendations you would make to them right now that they can implement to start mastering their wealth or start building their money machine, or, you know, anything that people can start doing now?
I would say first things first. And you know, this is in the book. We also teach this at the event. The biggest decision that you can make financially for yourself is to make a decision about the amount, percentage-wise, of money that you're going to put away out of your earnings, right? So we all need to go out and be earning machines, right? So whether it's coaching or working, like I have a friend, I kid you not, he wakes up in the morning and he does some deliveries for a company. Then he coaches. Now, mind you, this guy probably makes a healthy 6 figures as a coach, but he wakes up in the morning and does deliveries. Then he coaches, and then he drives Uber 2 or 3 times a week. He's single. He's driven to earn because he wants to build that money machine. So he's constantly putting himself in a position to earn. And he does a daily email. He does a goal setting workshop. He's got streams of income that work for him online, even when he's not working. He's an earning machine, right? So I do coaching, trainings. I've got private clients, group clients. I've got comic book stores, other businesses that I'm partnered in, other deals that I work. Like, you should constantly be an earning machine. And then you take a percentage of your earnings and you commit. Is it 10%? Is it 15%? We always encourage double digits if you can. 10%, 15%, 20%, 30%, and you put it away. And you've got to commit to that percentage and commit to never grabbing that again, right? Now, how you stabilize yourself for that is you build, financial security. Build yourself financial protection. Make sure that you've got X amount of money stacked away, 3 months or 6 months. It's an emergency fund that covers your base. Once that's there, you start putting money away, because the power of compounding is going to work in your favor. But if you don't commit to a percentage, something will always come up. Right? I love what Tony says. If the government taxed you higher today, you'd find a way to pay the taxes. So tax yourself, put it in your business. And that's the biggest financial decision anyone will ever make. It's not what stock you're going to buy. It's not if you can get into a real estate fund. Those are all technicalities. That's just ways to grow your money. The biggest decision you make is, what's the percentage I'm committed to putting away to build my future? That's number one.
What's number two?
Number two, cut your expenses. Another mentor of ours, Joseph McClendon, recommended a book to me years ago called The Millionaire Next Door. And if you haven't read The Millionaire Next Door, it's a must. It's dry, in my opinion. I like the audiobook, but I've read the book as well a couple times. And it talks about being an under accumulator of wealth or a prodigious accumulator of wealth. And you don't want to be the under accumulator. You want to be the prodigious person, the person who's accumulating. And it talks about the lifestyle choices that the wealthy make, how they buy cars, how they choose schools, the furniture they buy, the clothes they buy, how they save, how they budget. And by the way, they have a spending plan and a savings plan. So they don't just plan to save, they also plan their spending. And if you listen to those lifestyle principles and you're willing to begin those adjustments, you'll see that it's very easy to put that percentage away because it's there. You're no longer standing in line for the next cell phone just because it's out, even though your cell phone works perfectly fine, right? You wait and you utilize the things that you have to the full, and you buy things that are quality versus buying a lot of quantity.
No, that's a good book. I think I have it, but I haven't read it. I think it's time. I was
learn through osmosis, right? So reading doesn't work like this. Reading works like this.
Just staring at my shelf. That'll make me wise.
Shelf help, right?
Right. That's a good one. I never heard that one. So, well, you coached a lot of people, I suppose, in your life since you were 14.
Well, I've been coaching since 24, 25.
I'm kidding. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you encounter when coaching people? Like, what are some patterns that you see over and over again, and how do you break those patterns?
Fear. There are 100 forms of fear. And most hesitation that we find in clients is because of fear. Fear that they're not going to be able to do it. Fear that they're not good enough. Fear that they're going to run out of resources. Fear that they don't know what they're doing. People hold back on chasing their dreams because they're afraid that they're not going to accomplish it, or that it's not something they can attain. And they forget sometimes that even if they don't get there, there's all these blessings and wonderful things that happen on the way to trying to achieve it. And I don't know if this is true for you. I know it's true for me that most of the time I thought I was heading for one thing, and the journey took me in a whole new direction that was so amazing that I almost forgot about the original intent, right? Like,
yep.
And you've got to be willing to submit to the journey and then accept that life is going to happen on life's terms. And you can create your fate. You can go out and design life. But life's going to happen on life's terms, and most of the time, that's a blessing. Most of the time, that's a blessing.
Life happens on life's terms. And, when somebody's in fear, because I guess I'm a fearful person for certain things, like, success, for example. Sometimes I fear success, or I fear failure, stuff like that. I'm not afraid of public speaking, for example, which a lot of people say that's the biggest fear, like bigger than dying, but I'm okay with that one. But what tools do you use with people to help them, maybe not overcome that fear, but do it anyway, like act in spite of it?
So you've been to Unleash the Power Within, right?
Yes, I have.
The whole metaphor of the firewalk is taking the first step. Now, when you realize, you get out there and you smell the smoke and you realize that those coals really are hot, a little fear kicks in. But in that moment, you turn fear into power, right? And the same tools that we use to do that are the same tools that we use in coaching. It's state management. Now, breaking it down into a science, we call it the triad, right? So first, we've got to put somebody in a physiology of power. Coaching is fantastic, but one of the mistakes I see a lot of coaches make is they don't move their clients. They don't get them up and in their body, right? There's intellectual mastery, there's emotional mastery, and then there's physical mastery. And when a coach can get a client moving and get them into physical mastery and engage their physiology, it's much easier to move them past fear, especially if we put them in a powerful physiology, ground them, help them feel their center, take a deep breath, remember who they are. And there's all sorts of tools we've learned over the years. Take them back to a time where they felt powerful in the past, have them access it, maybe set an anchor, all sorts of fun stuff. But if we can get them to stand physically in their power, focus on how to make something happen and ask the right questions, like what resources are available to me now? What's life going to be like when I achieve this? What's life like 10 years, 15 years down the road, right? So help them focus on it happening versus all the fear-based stuff about it not happening or not being good enough. And we engage their body in that process. Those three elements of physiology, focus, and powerful language, whether it's questions or I am statements, or just a great incantation. If you've watched Tony's Netflix documentary, he starts it by saying, I built this guy, even though they use colorful language. And he went running. He said, I'm unstoppable. I mean, he used, an expletive, but I'm unstoppable. I'm unstoppable. I'm unstoppable, until he believed it. And if you look at Tony, he's unstoppable, right? It's all by design, right? Strong physiology, directed focus, powerful language. And if you get somebody into that state, anything's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of fear is a state. There's a physiology you feel in it. You're focused on certain things when you're fearful. And there's language in your head you're using, I don't know, I'm not good enough. You just have to change those patterns. And in that moment, you can move somebody into action. And once they get into action, there's momentum, right? And it's the foundation of everything Tony teaches. It's so simple, but it's one of those things we say it's simple, but sometimes it's not easy. When you've got a coach at you every 7 to 10 days, it becomes a little easier because you got a partner in crime.
What are some of your favorite incantations? Are there any that you use on a daily basis?
Yes.
Yes.
So I love the incantation, all I need is within me now.
Oh my God, I love that one too.
My references for that are intense. We started learning about, what Tony called the psychology of personalities, which was that we had all these personalities in us. We have the lover, the fighter. Some of us have a jerk, or, a person who's angry or frustrated. And we all have those parts, right? I'm a parent. I have a part in me that's totally loving, that loves to be around my daughter all the time. She's my life. And I'll be honest, as a parent, sometimes I get frustrated, and there's a part of me that's a frustrated parent at times. We all have these parts, but there's some parts of us that have really shown up. For me, creativity, right? I went to art school. I'm extremely creative. And charisma. I'm not afraid to own that I have been a charismatic person since I was a child. If I remember that that's always inside of me, that I have all the love I need, all the peace I need, all the strength I need, all the focus I need, and it's all within me, I'm not so focused on external resources. Avalanches of abundance flow to me daily. I love that incantation. I learned from a mentor once. He said, if you're walking around, his name was Joe Williams. As a matter of fact, he taught wealth mastery years and years and years ago.
Oh, really?
Joe said, if you're walking around looking for abundance, you're like a fish swimming in the ocean looking for water. It's all around us. And if you remember that, and you really do a good job of incanting that and remembering that all you need is within you, the balance of avalanches of abundance flowing and everything I need is within me keeps me out of scarcity, which was one of my greatest forms of fear. And I like every day and every way I'm getting stronger and stronger.
I love it.
And that doesn't just mean physically stronger. Emotional mastery is a strength as well. Resilience is a strength. And I actually have a client, he tattooed that on his arm. He's a
really?
big, that is one of my all-time favorites, especially when I'm running. You know, it's an incantation that comes in mind. And sometimes just yes. Like just saying yes feels good.
Yes. Yeah, I remember learning like because before I immersed myself in the world of Tony, I only knew affirmations. And I remember, I don't know, I think it was at UPW, that was the first event I attended, that he explained the difference, right? How would you explain the difference? Because maybe some of the people watching don't understand and they think we're talking about magicians or wizards.
Yeah, no. Affirmations are really just the words, right?
Yeah,
and,
just the words.
And if you repeat them calmly in your head over and over again without the emotional intensity, it's an intellectual process. But an incantation means you're incanting it into your body, right? You're getting it into your soul. So there's movement and emotion in the words, and you search for emotional connection to the words so that there's a link in your brain between the words and how you feel. And when you start to incorporate that, you've got an incantation.
So, you know, a lot of people nowadays, you know, they want everything fast. They want everything yesterday. There's no, like, people have no patience. You know, and some people, like you said, you become an earning machine, and maybe sometimes you get burnt out because of that, because you're so focused on that. What advice do you have for people to avoid getting to that state of burnout where, you know, they're consumed by their work and their goals and all that?
Number one, it's no good to have a ton of wealth and not be able to enjoy it because your health is out of reach, right? Interestingly enough, when I was in that first event with Tony, he wrapped it up by saying that patience and persistence were the most important things to remember. So it was a sales and influence training with a lot of people who wanted to make money and they wanted it now. And he said, listen, you got to be patient and persistent. And persistence is something that happens over time, right? Persistence means you keep at it, moving over and over again. And you add patience to that, meaning you have to get patient with yourself. If you look at people who we respect today, who have built huge companies and long-term wealth, they really narrowed their focus and they stayed in a lane, and they rode in that lane for a long. Bill Gates got in line and stayed in line, right? Keith Cunningham, right? Get in line and stay in line, right? Steve Jobs got in line and he stayed in line, right? They focused on building companies with one specific goal, with a mission in mind. Warren Buffett, you know, we look at Warren Buffett and God bless him. He's the most adorable old man on the planet. And it wasn't until his late 30s and early 40s that he really started to build his wealth. And I see a lot of folks out there in their early 20s and 30s putting all this pressure on themselves, not realizing that they have already planted a seed and they're watering it. And they're looking at the surface for the plant and they want the fruit, and they're not realizing that these strong roots are growing underneath the ground. And that once those roots are stable, the plant will pop up, and in short order, it will bear fruit. But if they're not patient, they'll dig up the ground and plant another seed, and then they got to wait for that whole process of the roots to strengthen over again. But I get asked all the time, you know, oh, Mike, you're a coach and you're a speaker, and why don't you do your own thing? Listen, I planted roots with a company and an organization and a man whose mission I believe in. And there's no reason for me to go dig up and replant on my own when I believe hardcore that this is the right mission for me to be in. I don't need to go be another Tony. I'm just totally happy supporting Tony's mission and coaching the clients and speaking for the company. Like, I love what I do. And people look at me like an alien, right? But a few years ago, Tony blessed everyone in the company who planted their roots. He did an employee stock option program.
Nice.
Where all of us that have been there for a long time and are vested are owners of the company. He gave us 50% of the company. And it means my retirement, even if I retired early, even if I did leave and decided to do something else, Tony gifted me hundreds of thousands, and if I'm here, millions of dollars. We have people that will retire with millions of dollars because they planted their roots, they watered that seed, they got in line, and they stayed in line. It doesn't mean that you have to go work for another company. That was just my choice. Even if you're an entrepreneur and you start your own business, right? Patience and persistence. Get in line and stay in line, right? Look at Tony's progress over time. Study Keith Cunningham and the things he teaches. Look at all these giants that we all look up to and look at how long they stayed in line before something tipped over for them. And we see people's highlight reels today on social media. They're not showing the stuff that goes on in the background while they're building their companies, right? How many sleepless nights do you think Steve Jobs and Bill Gates had, or Michael Dell or Mark Cuban, like with hundreds of jobs weighing on their shoulders and paying payroll and trying to innovate and borrowing money and doing a capital raise in order to keep their companies going, like, is not for the faint of heart. But if you get in line and you stay in line, you exercise patience and persistence, you'll do well.
I love it. That was very well said. So much value, my man. And also, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning, I mean, you're sticking with Tony and everything, but you're still doing some of your own thing. Like it's not, one thing doesn't exclude the other. So,
right.
You know, and by the way, what's your favorite comic book, if you have one?
My favorite comic book character is Daredevil, as a single character. My favorite comic book since I've been a child growing up is the X-Men. You know, Daredevil's this guy who he's blind, right? But what he does is take advantage of all his other senses. And by day, he's about, you know, justice. He's a lawyer. And at night, you know, he goes out and protects the streets and protects people who can't protect themselves. And I love that. The X-Men is actually just a big story about the civil rights movement. You know, the mutants are anybody who felt oppressed. And I know when Stan Lee wrote the X-Men, he wrote Professor Xavier, who formed the X-Men, to kind of be a representation of Martin Luther King, and Magneto, who was his best friend, who also fought for mutant rights in a different way, was representative of Malcolm X. And he was trying to take a story and an idea around people that were different but had these wonderful powers and these things that nobody knew they had, and tell a story to create awareness about the civil rights movement. Stan Lee was brilliant. He took things that people feared. You know, we went into space, and he told the story of the Fantastic Four and how cosmic rays gave them superpowers when everybody was afraid of what space was going to do. Or the atomic bomb, and here, you know, nuclear radiation, whether it was a spider, a radioactive spider that bit Spider-Man, or gamma rays from a bomb that created the Hulk. All these things were feared in the 50s and 60s, and he made them like these wonderful things that created this awesome world. And he's just another example of somebody who took things that people feared most and showed them another perspective. Through comic books, he was like coaching the world on how to see things. And God bless him, he passed recently, but he left his mark. You know, most comic creators created one character. Like Bob Kane and Bill Finger created Batman. Joel Siegel and Jerry Schuster, I believe, created Superman.
I don't know.
Stan Lee created the X-Men, Daredevil, Spider-Man, the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, Ant-Man, right? Like, and the list just goes on and on. He created a whole universe. So his creative process is something that's worth studying. So thank you.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I mean, I'm not that much into comic books. I was when I was a little younger. But those analogies and what you just said, you know, it gives you something to think about. It's like, wow, you know.
Matter of fact, those are X-Men statues. Right,
are they?
Boxes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was wondering. It's a bit blurry from here, but yeah, I'm sure a hardcore fan will recognize them.
Probably immediately.
So besides Tony, who else is an inspiring figure for you? Who else do you look up to? Who else inspires you to, you know, to be better, to achieve more, to make a bigger impact?
Well, Stan definitely was one of those people.
Definitely Stan.
And today at Marvel Entertainment, there's a gentleman named Joe Quesada. And believe it or not, Joe broke into comics after going through personal power. And he went to Unleash the Power Within and then made a life change and got into comic books. So Joe's a huge inspiration and has been for years, and thankful today to call him a friend. My whole life, I've read and studied and looked up to the example that Nelson Mandela left. He's been a huge inspiration. And today I'm wildly inspired by Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
How he raises his children, how he communicates with his fan base, his creative breadth. I mean, he is just like, from his rapping to his music to his dance to his acting to the varied roles he's played, from knocking out aliens to Muhammad Ali to to the Pursuit of Happiness. He has played all these different roles, and he's done them all so well. My favorite movie of all time is Hitch. It's about a dating coach.
I love that movie. I actually really enjoy it.
Doesn't hurt that there's Eva Mendes in it. That's a whole other story. And lately, my little brother.
Wow.
My little brother. He's got 3 startups. He's busting his butt down in Miami, working in a WeWork every day. He's a great husband, and just driven to provide so much value for his investors and for his customers. And, I would say too, Grant, we saw each other at Grant's seminar. The way Grant shows up for his customer base, the value that they add. I mean, most of the stuff they train on, they do for free on like Instagram. He drops value like every day.
Yeah.
And how he and Elena work together as a couple is wildly inspiring. Him and Tony and Sage, like there's these 2 power couples that both support each other in very different energies, right? Sage is so nurturing and she takes care of Tony, and she's got this very grounded spiritual energy. And in a different way, Elena brings that, but Elena is about building that empire and has that boss lady energy. And, I love that my daughter is going to get to grow up watching both of them, right?
Yeah.
There's a good balance to both. And then just to watch Grant, how he is as a father, not only how he is for his daughters, but how he shows up as an uncle to a lot of the people in his environment, and how proud he is of doing that, how well he's taking care of Jared and Sherry and his team. There's a lot to be said about that too. Both he and Tony are very good about taking care of their teams, very good about how they communicate. And it's no surprise that they both own their space in their own way, right? I see your little 10X hat back there. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I have the 10X, the hat. I have let me move this. I have the no negativity allowed here.
What?
Mind's blown. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, like they're very different in many ways, different energies and everything. And from Grant, I also take like a lot of the positive aspects. I connected with him a few years ago. He was so, he has grown so much since, but he was so approachable. Like I would message him on Snapchat and he would reply, and I was like, oh my God, he actually is replying.
Yes, he is.
It was crazy. So I love how he
monster about that on social media. Like he is nonstop.
Nonstop. Like, and sometimes I'm like lying on my couch and I look at my phone, Grant Cardone is going live, and I'm like, oh my, he goes live every day. Maybe I should go live every day too. I don't know.
10X results.
There you go. That's it. You gotta do 10X the work. Oh my gosh. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Like the people you mentioned, we definitely share a few of those names. Besides your comic book store, and are there any other current projects, anything you're working on right now that you're excited about? You want to share?
Just through working with some clients, some opportunities to find and move funding into films cool. Has come my way. So there's a group out of LA and Miami that recently put films in front of us that are being produced and acted in by like Leonardo DiCaprio and I don't know if I'm allowed to say a number of other really awesome stars on some really awesome projects, not small stuff.
Wow.
And some of them are animated, and I have a brief background in animation as well. An early business that I started with a guy I went to high school with was an animation studio, and we did some small work for a little while. It was fun. And I've always kept my finger on the pulse of that industry. And now some of these animated films are coming back. And the opportunity to reach out, one, for people who want to invest in stuff like that. And then two, being able to help broker those deals. It's just fun for me.
Wow.
I go in not even knowing sometimes if I'm getting paid for bringing the people together. But I love the fact that I'm bringing the people together. And then going down and working on projects with my brother. Some of the projects that he's working on. He's got an algorithmic options trading platform called Option Alpha. And I just helped film some content for that for people to understand how to approach their wealth building. And working with goalsetting.org. So there's a project out there to create some content for people to get them in a good habit with their goals. And it's goalsetting.org. There's a ton of free content. And so working to put some content out there, they want established coaches who have done some cool work to come on and add some value for people. Because, you and I are blessed. We can pay to go to personal development events and travel. Some people are just getting started and trying to figure it out. Yeah. So they're putting out some really great content. So recently I've been working with them, and that's been a lot of fun too.
Awesome. We'll be sure to check them out. Are you at all on social media, by the way? Like, where can people find you?
I've got a Facebook page that I engage in pretty regularly. And I've recently, I know I'm late to the game, but I've recently started playing on Instagram. So
What's your Instagram?
Michael J. Savage, or they can look up Coach Savage.
Michael J. Savage, Coach Savage. Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful, so valuable. And do you have any final words of inspiration or advice for the entrepreneurs and hustlers who are listening to or watching our interview today?
Yes. So a lot of times life will happen on life's terms, and it seems unjust or unfair, right? You've tried your hardest and something didn't work out. And I remember Tony said this once, and it sticks with me all the time. He said, when things seem unjust or unfair and you show up anyways and give 100%, that is when greatness shows up. And so no matter how unjust or unfair life seems, or circumstances seem, or situations at work or in a relationship seem, if you just show up anyways and give 100%, you will feel so good about yourself and what you've given. It's inevitable that your greatness will show up. So just remember that.
Thank you so much. And man, I look forward to seeing you again someday. Hopefully not by accident. And
yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody. I'm going to put Mike's, do you have a website too? Or what's the easiest way to reach you? Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram or Facebook, and the website is TonyRobbins.com.
TonyRobbins.com.
That's Tony's work.
I love it. Thank you, Mike. Have a wonderful day, and talk to you again soon.
Much appreciated. Talk to you soon.